Rabbi Say, welcome back to Yerushalmi Yoma. We are Perek Chamishi Halacha Beis, which is Daf Lamed Daled. Now, the Kohen Gadol is coming into the Kodesh Kodashim. He's going to be doing the Keteres. He's going to leave the Kodesh Kodashim. Now, we're following the Chachamim view that there were two curtains separating between the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim, and between them was a gap of an Amma, and you could walk in between. One had an entrance on one side, one had an entrance on the other side. Hachitzaina, the outer parochas, Perufa, was sort of folded back, min adorim, from the south side. The Panimis, in the inner one, was min atzofan, was folded back from the north. So the Kohen Gadol comes in on the south, walks all the way along, and Mahalech Benen walks between them, until he reaches the north side. And he reaches the north, he comes into the Kodesh Kodashim, he faces the south, coming back on himself, to reach the area between the poles of the Aron. He follows to his left with the parochas, so he goes towards the south, along the parochas, which is now on his left, until he reaches the Aron between the two poles. Once he reaches the Aron, he puts the pan of coals between the two poles. He sort of piles up the keteres on the coals. Okay, he's on the coals. He's not scatting them. The fire shouldn't take hold of everything in one go, and the smoke will wait a bit and won't go up straight away. But it's malei habayis ashan, and the house is full of smoke. After that, Yatsa, he leaves, and he comes out the way he went in. So he doesn't go down, he goes back up to the north and then follows it all the way down in between the curtains until he comes out again on the south. And he prays a short tefillah b'beis hachitzon. Now this is in the Heichal. They say this 13 is going on the Heichal. He would not lengthen, not to frighten the Jewish people that they're worried he may have died in the Kodesh Kodashim. Okay? Now, which Beis HaMikdash are we talking about? Now, the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, there was an Aron there. And the Kohen would go between the poles, and he put the Keteres there. Okay? The second Beis HaMikdash, there was no Aron. Right? Now, the first Beis HaMikdash, there weren't two curtains there. Right? There was what they knew. There was it had a wall, whatever. There was just a hole in the middle of the wall. There wasn't two curtains in the first Beis HaMikdash. So what's going on? On the one hand, you're mentioning the Aron, but the Aron was only there in the first Beis HaMikdash, but the two curtains were only there in the second Beis HaMikdash. Right? In the first Beis HaMikdash, there was no parochas. There was a wall separating between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. Second Beis HaMikdash, you're reaching the Aron, but the Aron wasn't there. Right? There was a stone there. So the Bablis have talked about the second Beis HaMikdash, and the Aron mentioned here, it means the place where the Aron used to be. Right? So it doesn't mean the Aron, because in the second Beis HaMikdash there was no Aron, it had already been hidden away. Now, Tani, we've learnt in a Brisa. Now, we're going to work out how the Kohen Gadol is going from the entrance to the Kodesh Kodashim. Now, he's coming from the front, from the Ulam, the antechamber. He's going through the Heichal, he's entering the Kodesh Kodashim. So we have different ways. So, Tani, we've learnt in a Brisa, Min ha-menorah v'ladarem ha-yenichnas. So on the south side of the menorah, so he would go on the far left as he's coming in, and going all the way round on the far left, right? He would go in that way and go through to the parochas. So in other words, he went between the menorah and the south wall. Divrei Reb Meir. That is the view of Reb Meir. Rabbi Yossi said, "Min hashulchan v'latzafan onei yenechnas." No. He went on the north side, the other side, the completely other side, between the Shulchan and the north wall. He would go in, right, between the Shulchan and the north wall, until he reaches the Parochas, which was in the north, according to Rabbi Yossi. Now, some learn, and some learn he went in the middle, between the Mizbeach and the Menorah. So he went down in towards the middle, just on the left of the Mizbeach Hazav, and then he comes round and he goes between the Menorah and the Shulchan, right? And he's turning a bit to the south until he reaches the Parochas, whatever it is, and he comes in the Parochas there. and he walks in the amma between the two curtains until he reaches the north side of the inner parochas. Now he's going through these two parochas between them, and he's pushing them aside as he's going between them. He's widening the space between them as he's walking. Because we don't want the parochas to burn from all the coals that are in his pan. Right? So he's got to make sure he pushes them away so that the coals don't burn out the parochas. Now, after he comes between the two parochas from the south to the north, he reaches the north and he comes to the Kodesh Kodashim, and he now faces the south, and he walks along until he reaches in between the two poles of the Aron, and he puts the pan between the two poles. When he's bringing the Ketores, he's standing between the two poles and he's facing the Aron. The Badim reached all the way till the Parochas, right? The Badim stretched into the Parochas. So how does he go to the area between the poles if they're stretching all the way to the Parochas? So that when he reaches the Badim, he has to distance himself towards the east and push the Parochas to the east with his body. He has to push it back in order to make a space for him to go and come into the area between the poles. We do not want it to appear as if he's like stepping over the poles, to go into the area between them. So we don't want him to like climb over them or anything, or climb under them. He can't do that. But how does he get past them? Well, the only way to get past them is he has to go back and push the parochas back in order to go into the area between the two poles. Yeah? It doesn't mean mafsia that he's like jumping over, no. Some say, you should have said my name. If we don't move the parochas, he'll have to jump. Yeah, some say he'll have to jump on top of it to go into that area. That's not very good to do that. And it's not as if he's really on top of it. It's not really derech covered, whatever. It's not really between the poles. He's not jumping between the poles. He'll be jumping over a pole. Right, okay. Now, this makes sense with the first place of Mikdash, where the Aron was there. Now then, as we said, there was no parochas between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. It was actually a wall. So what's he pushing back then if there was a wall there? So, there was a doorway in the middle, and there was a parochas over the doorway. So that, and the Badim are stretching into the parochas, okay? So there's still a parochas which needs pushing back. And the doorway was wider than the distance between the two poles of the Aron, and he's coming in from the north side of the doorway, from the north to the Aron, and then he's going towards the south. He's reaching till the North Pole, right, the North Pole, and then he has to distance the parochas a bit to the east in order to go in the area between the two poles. The Tosefta learns that there were two parochas. That was the second temple, but he still says when he comes and reaches the Aron, he's pushing the parochas in order to go in between the poles. But there weren't any poles, as we said. There were no Badim in the second base of Mikdash. And some say, although in the second base of Mikdash there was no Aron, the area where the Aron had been was still holy, designated for the Aron. So in Yom Kippur, the sprinklings had to be in front of the Aron, had to be before where the Aron was normally. Yeah? And therefore also the area of the Badim was holy to the area, set aside, designated for the poles. So you had to treat it as if the Aron was still there, as if the poles were still there. That's what you had to say. All right, let's carry on. Now, after he puts the machta, the pan, between the two poles, he's gathering the ketores on the coals. Now, he's not allowed to pour the ketores from the spoon on top of the coals. He has to first bring the ketores back into his handful, according to the normal understanding. Just wait, we've got another opinion soon. But for now, he's to take the spoon and pour it back into his handfuls. And then he's allowed to put it onto the coals. So now, and of course in Babli always says this was one of the hardest avodas of the base of Mikdash, because he's not allowed to spill any ketores as he's doing it. The ketores in the spoon is his two heapfuls, Now, how is he doing this hardest work of pouring the keteres back from the spoon into his two handfuls? So, so how is he returning the keteres from the spoon into his hands? He can't hold the spoon in one hand and pour it into his hands because he needs to pour the keteres into his two hands. Rav Chanina said, Maniach es hamachta ba'aretz. So the literal meaning, you'll put the pan of the coals on the ground. V'zoyrek es hakaf. You'll throw the keteres spoon into the air, ba'avir, b'kalta, and that way he catches the keteres with his two handfuls. Right? The juggler, right? He's throwing the spoon in the air and catching it with his two handfuls. Shmuel Amar, b'yedado b'raglai. Shmuel says, he holds the spoon between his legs and turns it round and pours it into his hands. Okay? Now, Shmuel didn't like the idea of throwing things in the air. In the Bavli, it brings, according to Rashi, you put it between your arms and you hold the spoon like with the tops of your fingers where the hand is near your body between your two arms, and with your thumbs you're sort of moving it into your handful, and that's where you're pushing the spoon back and then the spoon turning it round and it comes into your hands. Another girsa was you hold it with the tops of your fingers or your teeth, and you pour it with your thumbs, the keteres, from the spoon into your handfuls. Okay? And some say, you'd hold it in your mouth and pour it that way down. Okay? Now that's all very well. So that is normally how everyone understands it. Yeah, that this is the hardest avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, and that you're pouring it from the spoon into your hands. What did we do the next bit? Rav Yochanan ma'are metoch hakaf. He says you actually, what's Rav Yochanan saying here now? He says, ma'ara, you pour the keteres metoch hakaf from the spoon on top of the coals, and you don't have to return the keteres into your handfuls. You hear this? According to this view, you don't have to put it in your hands at all. You can put it straight from the spoon onto the coals. So the hardest avodah, the Beis Hamikdash, Rav Yochanan does not hold of. Now, so in the Ha'aras here they say, so Shmuel and Rav Chanina are arguing how you have to put the keteres from the spoon into your handful. Rav Yochanan is saying you don't have to put it back in your handful. Now the Ritva says, why Rav Chanina then mentions putting the pan on the ground, which is already mentioned in the Mishnah. Rav Chanina is saying putting it on the ground, and we already know that. The Radvaz learns the Gemara that our Gemara takes on that the Kohen God, the Radvaz seems to learn the whole Gemara here, that you don't have to put the keteres into your handfuls, according to anyone. You're pouring it from the spoon on the coals, like the last opinion. He says the others also hold of that. And when they said various things about throwing it in the air and this, that, and the other, they're not talking about putting it into your hands. It's how you're careful not to burn yourself when the keteres is gathering and creating the smoke when you're piling it on the coals. How do you stop yourself getting burnt when you're piling it on the coals? That's what they're talking about, not the idea of putting it in your handful. Right? So now, the Babli said, to stop you getting burnt, you start gathering the keteres at the areas, the most distant part of your body, and you gradually bring it nearer. Gemara's got other ways. Rav Chanina said, put the spoon on the ground, throw the spoon in the air towards the pan, which is on the ground, and it will catch as it goes in. You hear that? So he's talking about not burning yourself. He's not talking about how to put it in your handful. Shmuel doesn't argue on that. He says, in order to make sure the keteres gets caught by the pan, he says, when you throw the spoon in the air, move the pan with your leg, and make sure it's in the right place to catch the Ketores that falls down. So according to this Ridvaz, no one here says that you have to put the Ketores in your hands. And that is a big chidush. It's kedai to come just for that. You would not have heard that before. When I learned this Gemara 7 years ago, whenever it was, I definitely didn't learn this Ridvaz. I had no idea that there's versions of the Yerushalmi who hold you don't have to put the Ketores in your hands at all. But that's what we've got here, Rabbi say. You've seen it here. Okay, let's carry on. But here, based on the old shot anyway, but whatever happens, here, mitameres, now the smoke on the Ketores, mitameres, right, it goes up to the roof, and then it spreads to the sides. But Yeredes, it comes down next to the walls and it fills the house. After the siyum of the avodah of the Ketores, Yatzei comes out, the Bala Derech Nisasa, he comes out the way he went in. Right? And the Mishnah is according to Rabbi Yossi, like Rabbi Yossi, who says there's one pareches, and that's why he has to go out from the south side. We understand the Mishnah has to tell you, you might have thought go out on the south. He says, no, you have to go back to the north and come out from there. Okay? There was one pareches between the Heichal and Kodesh Kodashim, and the Kohanim working the Heichal throughout the year wouldn't see the Kodesh Kodashim. It was hanging, but it wasn't tied to the sides. And Yom Kippur, you can move a bit of the edge to go in and go out, because you go in on the south side or the north side, according to this view, right? So you'd go out the side that you went in. That's what happens over here. Now, Baram Karameah, according to Rameah, who holds there were two curtains, and the inner one was open from the north. Even if you wanted to go on the south side, there was no entrance there. You couldn't do it because the inner one was only open on the north. The truth is, the Mishnah can't be like Rabbi Yossi, because the ratio of the Mishnah says there were two curtains, and it was the inner one was open on the north, and that's like Rameah. The Mishnah can't start saying in the Sefer like Rabbi Yossi there was only one paroches. Basically, you have to say it's like Rameah. So if that's the case, Lama, why do you have to tell me you have to go out from the north? I mean, there's no other choice. That's the only way out. So the Mishnah, which says you come out the way you went in, it doesn't mean that you have to leave from the north because you went in there. No. Basically, you should not turn your back to the Kodesh Kodashim. Yeah, when you're turning to go back, don't turn your body back. So just like when you came in, you were facing the Aron. So when you leave as well, you should face the Aron. Don't turn your face and go to the door in the north when your face is facing the north and your back is to the Aron. You should go where your back is facing. You go backwards, so you're always facing the Aron at all times. Okay. Because it says, Vayabai. Now this is the din. When you leave a holy area, don't go with your back to that area. Because it says, Vayabai Shalom Alabama Shebe Gibon. Yerushalmi. He came to the Bama which was in Gibon, Yerushalmi. Now Gibon is not Yerushalmi. It's a separate place. So Manakion, what are we talking about? If we're just asking if you could turn it off, please. Yeah, thank you very much. So if you're talking about that Shlomo was coming from Yerushalayim to the Bama in Givon, then Neymar say so. He came from Yerushalayim to the Bama. If he's coming back from the Bama to Yerushalayim, Neymar, then he should say Mi Bama Yerushalayim Ayaba. So that's what he's doing. He says we're coming back to Yerushalayim, and the Lashon La Bama Asher Begimon tells me when he's coming back from the Bama, he went as if Bama Hayaba, as if the Bama he's coming to. So just like when he's coming to the Bama, he was facing the Bama. When he left the Bama, he was still facing the Bama, and he went backwards. Not to put his back to the holy area. Okay? And he says a short tefillah. This is the tefillah of Seis when he left Min HaKodesh. By the way, the nusach here is not like the Babli nusach. It's not necessarily like our nusach in the Siddur either. You hear outside, could be they said different things in different years, right? So let's see what he says. It should be. So we should not have a decree of exile. It's not this day, not the whole year. If there was a decree by Yom Hazeh this year, we should go to a place of Torah. We shouldn't go in exile against our will, but it should be a good yishuv. Right? When you take upon yourself to Golus willingly, It's like Xeras Golos. Okay. One of the reasons that Sukkot comes after Yom Kippur is so that if it was decreed on Yom Kippur a person to have Golos, he exempts himself from the Gezerah by leaving his house and going to the Sukkah. Yeah, it's a kapara for Golos. Yeah. Another pshat is, even if we are going to be exiled, it should be to a place that we can learn Torah. He should have done to get rid of the decree. Why doesn't he done to get rid of the decree? Some say if we're chayiv golos for averos and we didn't come back from the avera, you can't start asking for the decree to be taken away. So he's davening that if that's the case, at least the golos should be an area not connected with bittul Torah. Okay. Yehirat Sam. What else have we got? Yehirat Sam elefanacha. Shem Elokeinu. We should not have a financial lacking. This year. If it has to be a lacking, it should be a lacking of mitzvahs. Now, a person's money is fixed, the Bavli says, from Rosh Hashanah. So everything's fixed from Rosh Hashanah. It could be the government will take his money away. So his tefillah is, if we have to have something lacking, it should be through tzedakah and other money that we're spending for mitzvahs, but not taking money from the government. The government should take our money for no reason. Okay. The economy should be in order. Yeah. And shanat saba, satisfaction, shanat masa matan, and business, shanat geshuma, ushchuna, utzulula. Like the geshuma is rainy and a bit of heat as well. They say here, it should be with rain, but not too much. It should be warm as well. There should also be a bit of shade. Yeah. The Bavli says, well, if it's hot, is that a big thing? So the Bavli changes the tefillah and says, if it's gezerah, it should be shechuna, it should be geshuma as well. There should be rain as well. You need a lot of rain as well. Okay. They shouldn't need each other to support each other. Do not listen to the wayfarers who pray there should be no rain. They said, the Jewish people should not raise themselves one on the other. Different guesses on this. A person shouldn't dominate too much on others, more than what's fitting. Some say he's praying for all the Jewish people. They shouldn't be raising themselves one on another. The Chacham in Caesarea, they said, it's a tefillah for Caesarea because the Romans were living there and causing trouble. So he's praying a special tefillah that the Romans in Caesarea shouldn't be too heavy on the Jewish people who are there. Anshe Asharain, Ben of Sharon, he would say, their houses should not be their graves. It was an area where there was floods from rain, so he prayed that their houses shouldn't sink in the mud. Some say it wasn't good for making buildings, and therefore the buildings weren't very strong. They have to build the houses again each time, every few years, and they will sort of fall down. Right? So as we said, the Bavli Girsa is much smaller than what we have here. There it says, Layade Avid Shultan, right? Don't get rid of the dominion of Beis Yehuda. They should continue to be in charge. Now, of course, during part of the Bayis Sheni, they weren't people from David HaMelech's rule, right? David HaMelech's family in charge. In Bayis Sheni, they weren't there. They were subservient to the Greeks and the Persians. The leaders who were there were not from Yehuda. After that, you had the Hasmoneans a bit who were Kohanim, and Herod and so on. So some Rishonim learn Resh Gelusa means the Rosh HaGola in Bavel, who was from the children of David HaMelech from Shevet Yehuda. And the Malchus in Bavel gave them a certain degree of leadership in order to get people to keep the Torah, right? Others learn that Beis Yehuda is only in the first Beis Hamikdash when they had Malchus, Beis David, but the second temple, L'Yad Yisrael Israel, it was a tefillah on the officers in general. Okay. Let's carry on. He wouldn't lengthen too much, not to frighten the Jewish people. We had a story where the Kohen Gadol who was too long. The Gamrai, they were going to go in and get him out to see what happened. And then he came out just as they're about to go in. Amr, they said, Shimon and Tzaddik Chaim. Amr, lama arachta, why were you so long? Amr, praying for the temple not to be destroyed. Amr, you shouldn't have been davening too long. He was the Kohen Gadol 40 years. The last year, Yom Kippur, he said this year he was going to die. Amr said, how do you know? Every year he went in, there was one elder wearing white, coming white, and going with him into the Holy of Holies, and coming out with him. This year he went with him but didn't come out. Now no one is allowed in the Har Moed while the Kohen Gadol is in the Holy of Holies. Now the Bavli wants to learn that only people aren't allowed, but Yerushalmi goes further. Yerushalmi says angels are also not allowed. Yeah, even those like angels are not allowed. They're not allowed to be in the Har Moed when the Kohen Gadol goes into the Kodesh Kodashim. So you're going to tell me it wasn't a person, it was a malach, but how can it be a malach going in? The Pasuk says even a malach can't go in. He says, who said that one zaken was a person or a malach? It was Hashem himself. And he's called a man wearing white clothes. It says, so he's like sitting like a white elder. So that's who it was. It wasn't an angel at all. Now, the Kohen Gadol is putting the pan between the poles of the Aron, is bringing the Ketores. In the first base of Mikdash, we said it was between the poles. Second base of Mikdash, there was no Aron. He brought the Ketores to put it in the place where he had put it in the first temple. Now, what is the exact place? Mishanita Aron, when the Aron was taken in place, Eben Sham, there was the stone there, Shasiya, it was called the foundation stone. That's the Nikris. It was higher from the ground 3 finger breadths. And on that he would put the coals. He would put the pan with the coals. Now, how is he going when there was no Aron? Tani, we've learned actually until the Aron was removed. He would go in to Yerushalmi. They had a light of the Aron. When the Aron was taken away, so then the Ketores went on the stone. Then it was all dark. So he's feeling around where he's going, feeling in the dark, going and feeling in the dark coming. Right? When there was an Aron, you could put the Ketores anywhere between the poles. Even when the stone wasn't there, it didn't reach all the way to the east. The stone was like under the Aron. The stone was where the Aron was, but a much smaller area. Okay? Why they didn't make an Aron in the second base of Mikdash? They made a menorah. They made a shulchan. So the Rishosh asked the question. He doesn't bring the answer here. The Shekhinah wasn't there in the second base of Mikdash. So he's walking in the dark. Why is it called that? From that the world was created. Why is it called that? From that the world was drunk from, was got energy from. It says, so Mitzion, which is based on Mikdash, is completed the beauty of the world. The worlds were created from Sion. And it says, I've made a stone. Basically, the Evan is the Rosh Pinah, the foundation of the world, and that's the Evan Shasiah. Okay? The Rishonim explained the world was based on the Evan Shasiah because that was the place of the Avodah and the base of Mikdash. And 3 things the word is standing. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. Okay? All right. How are we doing? Halacha Daled. After the Kohen Gadol shechs the parachatos and receives the blood, he gives the container to another Kohen to shake the blood, so we don't need to harden. After he's finishing the Ketores, he prays a small tefillah in the Heichal, as we said. He comes to the Azara to begin the avoid of the dam. No, tell us the dam mishum maris, but he takes the blood from someone who is stirring it. Once he comes in back into the Kodesh Kodashim, he stands where he was standing before. Here's the and he sprinkles one up and seven down. He did not have intention not to do up and not down. Ella kematzlif, like a matzlif. Now, matzlif, we will see what that is. This is how he counted. Achas, you always want to finish with 7, right? So he goes 1. Achas v'achas 1 and 1, 1 and 2. Achas 2, Achas 3, Achas 4, Achas 5, Achas 6, Achas 1 and 7. Yatsa, he leaves the Kodesh Kodashim. He puts the spoon, the container which has the blood, al-kain, azav, shaybeichel, on the base there. Haviu la'es ha'sa'ir. They bring in the goat, the blood of the goat, which was Lashem, right? He receives the blood. Goes back in. He stands where he stood before. Here's the menu. 1 up, 7 down, 11 go, not above, not below, only kamaslif, like a maslif. This is what he counted. Again, 1, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, etc., all the way to 1 and 7. He goes out and he leaves the container which has the goat blood, al-kain hasheni shaybeichel, on another base in the Heichal, and after that he takes the mizrak of the par from the first base. Rabbi Yehuda says, there was one base there, not al dam par, and he took the blood of the par from before and he put the spoon, the thing of damasai, in its place. So there was only one. But here's Amimanu, and he sprinkles it ala paroiches shekeneged, the area facing the paroiches, facing the oren bebachutz, from the outside of it. So he's in the Heichal, he's sprinkling. 1 up, 7 down. We'll see. And then he counted 1 and 1, etc. He takes the goat blood. Again on the parochos from outside. When is I counted 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, etc. He pours the blood of the par into the blood of the goat. And then and he sort of fills them up. So he puts the one which is empty from the 2 bloods into the full one into the empty one. So to mix them well. It says he provides the forgiveness. So now he goes to the golden mizbeach, which is lifnei Hashem, right? Because the other one is not lifnei Hashem. Right now. We've learned that when he's sprinkling the blood towards the kaparas on the Aron, he did it not up, not down, but like a matzlif. Ma'al kematzlif, what is this? Now, this is the way the Gemara they learn. Matara is like shaking your hand till your navel. You're sprinkling the blood through an action of shaking your hand. Right? Rena Chanala brings this. I don't know how you get the word from kematzlif. Others learn masalef, an expression of bending. We don't know if that's really what the Yerushalmi means. Remember, in Bavli you got the idea of one who gives lashes. Yeah, you're starting moving your hand down. But we don't seem to bring that here. Yeah, Bavli brings kemnagdana, like someone who's giving lashes. Like someone who's hitting a hammer blow, and you lift your hand and then bring it down. Whether that is the Yerushalmi or not, or it's not the same, or it is the same. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan, now why is it you're going to count the numbers as they are? So you shouldn't make a mistake. If you would just count 1 all the way, then 1, 2, 3, without mentioning the 1 that you did before, you'll make a mistake. Instead of starting a new number for the 7 below, you'll count 1 up and you'll think that's one of the 7, and then you'll count the first one below as 2, and you'll reach 7. You won't realize you made a mistake, and you'll think this is the 7th one and not the 6th one. So therefore that's the way we do it. Now, instead of starting a new number for the ones below, 1 till 7, why not just count 1 till 8? All the sprinklings, I need 8 sprinklings. Just count 1 till 8. We want you to finish with a 7. We learned in a brisa, you would count 1, 1, 2, etc. Sheva ba'achas. Why not? Rabbi Yehuda says 7 and 1. He's counting 1 after mentioning the other countings. So the reason to mention 1 with all the others, it's not that you shouldn't make a mistake. If that was the reason, you should mention 1 before you mention all the other numbers. Once you've already mentioned the number of the sprinkling, then you might make a mistake if you start saying 1. So why do you go back and say 1 each time? Rabbi Bun said, Ksivit says Alpanei HaKaporos, you sprinkle Alpanei HaKaporos, and before Kaporos, Shava Pamim, but Yazer is extra. Matam Alema Yazer, Kadesh Tehei Azaya, Rishona Nimnes Imayin. We want the first sprinkling to be counted together with the other 7. So therefore, the Hazar of above with the Hazars of below is Chib and HaTorah. You don't make a mistake. So that's why we do it. Now the sprinkling of the Pa and the Saya Keneged the Kaporos, the Kohen Gadol wouldn't do it not up on the edge of the Kaporos and not down on the bottom ledge, but like Kamatzlif. That basically means the blood is not actually going to touch the kaporos at all, the parochas, right? It's not going to touch that. It's in that direction. Sivit says, kaporos. Yachal, you might think, al gaga, does it actually touch the kaporos? Right? You should sprinkle it in a way it should definitely touch. Tamalami says, no, but if now kaporos, that you don't sprinkle on actually the kaporos itself. Yachal, the kaporos is the cover. Yachal, I might think, just like the parochas, same idea with the kaporos. Yachal, I might think it needs to touch it, but not on maybe on mitzvah, maybe the thickness of it. Tamaloma, no, al v'lifnei. So al tells you don't sprinkle the blood on the top of the forehead, the top of the parochas, and ifnei tells me don't sprinkle it on its roof. You have to sprinkle it towards the kaporos, facing the thickness of it, upwards. But the blood doesn't actually touch the kaporos itself; it falls on the ground in front of the oraim. Okay. Rav Zeira Amar, he said, "So shein agea." No, it should touch the kaporos. Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Amar said, "So shein agea." Yeah, it should touch the kaporos. Right. Okay. Amar Vibun Bachia Tamad Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. It says the his Isai ala kaporos with the kaporos. That's the sprinkling up and the ones down, and with the sprinklings above. It says v'hizah be'etzbaya panei kaporos. So we have Gzer Shava kaporos. The power is above, and the side, the blood is above. Ma kaporos sheneman alon. Now the blood above is loyal mitzcha. It's not on the top of the kaporos. Loyal gaga, not on the roof. It doesn't have to touch the kaporos at all. It's in that direction, right? Af kaporos sheneman kan. So with the goat as well, the ones up. Loyal mitzcha. We go loyal gaga, not on the roof. It doesn't have to touch the kaporos. Okay, I think we will stop here, Rabbi Say, and continue another day.